but we're certainly Little Island, and that's not going to change.
Okay. We're going to finish with a song, so I'm just looking for it. Thinking About You. It's a Frank Ocean song, but it's a cover.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that pops into your world, and you think, man, I love the original, and this doesn't take away from that, but it just gives it a very different view. And the young woman who's singing this, Flo Morrissey, she's incredibly young for how much she's just a natural singer. She can just do amazing things with her voice and perform. And this is Flo Morrissey and a guy named Matthew E. White, and it's a lovely song.
So Frank Ocean not involved. He did a different cover on the album. Is that right?
No, so it's a Frank Ocean original
song, right?
Yeah, Thinking About
Got
You,
it.
and would have been written by him.
Got it.
Some people who are real core fans aren't that happy, but it's just a lovely song. Again, it's the vibe of the thing.
Hey, thanks so much for giving us some of your very valuable time. We really appreciate it today.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome, and just want to say thank you to everyone down in the Hawke's Bay, Henry and Hannah, who've helped me out a lot. So appreciate it. Have a good day.
Okay, this is Thinking About You.
A tornado flew around my room before you came. Excuse the mess it made. It usually doesn't rain in Southern California, much like Arizona. My eyes don't shed tears, but boy, they roll when I'm thinking about you. Oh, no, I've been thinking about you. You know, I've been thinking about you. Do you think about me still? Do ya? No, I don't like you, I just thought you were cool enough to kick it. Got a beach house I could sell you in Idaho. Since you think I don't love you, I just thought you were cute. That's why I guess you got a fighter jet. I don't get to fly it though. I'm lying down thinking about you. Oh, no, I've been thinking about you. You know, I've been thinking about you. Do you think about me still?
How could I forget how you feel? And though you were my first time, a new feel, it will never get old. Not in my soul, not in my spirit. Keep it alive. We'll go down this road till it turns from color to black and white. Oh no, I don't think so far ahead. No, I don't think about forever. Ooh. Oh no, I don't think so far ahead. No, I don't think about forever. Ooh.
RNZ National. Hope you enjoyed that track. It's a Frank Ocean cover by Flo Morrissey and Matthew E. White.
RNZ News at 3, I'm Paul Brennan. The Prime Minister is adamant about her decision to call in the military to oversee quarantine and managed isolation facilities. The Assistant Chief of Defence, Air Commodore Digby Webb, will also audit the rules around leaving facilities, call in military personnel if needed, and regularly report to ministers. It comes after it emerged 2 women were granted compassionate leave and to leave a hotel without being tested. One of them subsequently tested positive for COVID-19. The Ministry of Health says there are no new cases today, but 320 close contacts of the pair have been identified. Jacinda Ardern says bringing in the military will boost the confidence of ministers and the public.
My view is we need the rigour, we need the confidence, and that we need the discipline that the military can provide in what is a significant logistical exercise.
Jacinda Ardern. Meanwhile, the Health Minister David Clark is rejecting calls for him to resign over the border botch-up.
Will you?
Yeah, we'll bring her up in a minute.
Laura, come on up.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and welcome everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today with the British High Commissioner Laura Clark and with the Minister for Trade and Export Growth, David Parker, for today's announcement. Today's announcement of the launch of free trade negotiations with the UK is an important milestone for both of us. New Zealand's connections with the United Kingdom are deep and enduring. Our history and people bind us together like few other relationships. As the UK moves into a new era, it is natural that a long-standing close friend like New Zealand should be among the first group of countries with whom the United Kingdom is launching free trade negotiations. This adds a further layer to our close cooperation to defend the values we hold dear and to uphold the global rules-based system that underpins our shared prosperity and security. Today, our 2 dynamic multicultural societies are connected through a vibrant network of business, trade, education, science, cultural and people-to-people ties. Underpinning these are our many shared values and our openness to creativity and innovation. As close friends, we look to each other when we are faced challenges, no more so than now as we each work to recover and rebuild from the impacts of COVID-19. A future free trade agreement will be a significant step forward in our relationship and unlock the potential for closer trade ties. It will ensure that our relationship remains strong and focused on the future. Together, we believe we can create a world-leading agreement that will open doors for our businesses to trade, invest, and innovate more, and to work more closely than ever to seize opportunities in the global economy. It will also demonstrate our commitment to inclusive and sustainable trade as reflected by our Trade for All agenda that Minister Parker has worked so hard on. It will benefit small and medium-sized enterprise where women are often overrepresented, Indigenous trade, as well as, of course, all regions within New Zealand. It's my pleasure now to hand over to Minister Parker and then over to Laura.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And for those who've attended, and greetings to the High Commissioner. The launch of the free trade negotiation today is the start of another important chapter in the New Zealand relationship with the United Kingdom. I think we all know that our 2 countries share a particularly close bond. Many people here will have lived in the UK for a period. I know that the Prime Minister did, I have myself. Our 2 countries work together on so many aspects of the international system. And as the Prime Minister has already said, responding to the challenge of COVID-19 and the economic and social consequences requires more global cooperation, not less, and trade has an important role in this. The negotiation of a high-quality, comprehensive and inclusive free trade agreement with the United Kingdom will send a vital message about the importance of free and open trade, rules-based trade internationally. The UK has similar interests to us in supporting an open rules-based international trading system. We, of course, have complementary legal systems. We share many institutions. In fact, many of our institutions are based on the UK's, and we share objectives and perspectives on trade issues. So it should make it possible for us to reach a high-quality FTA agreement within an efficient time frame. The UK is already our 6th largest trading partner, with two-way trade worth almost $6 billion New Zealand dollars. In terms of our objectives, we'll be seeking a FTA that delivers opportunities for exporters and businesses through providing comprehensive and commercially meaningful market access by removing tariffs and reducing other barriers to our trade in goods and services. We expect it will reflect New Zealand's Trade for All agenda on sustainable development, including on environment, climate change and labour. We want inclusive trade outcomes, especially for regions, for Maori, for women and small to medium enterprises. We'll ensure that the agreement preserves the right of the government to regulate in the public interest, including in the environment, taxation, education, health and the well-being of New Zealanders. And we will preserve the unique status of the Treaty of Waitangi. We will continue to oppose the inclusion of investor-state dispute settlement provisions. With 1 in 4 New Zealanders' jobs dependent on exports, and our knowledge that export firms are on average more productive, employ more people and pay better wages, it's clear that trade can help deliver New Zealand's post-COVID-19 recovery. And it'll do this through helping create more jobs, boosting productivity and generating growth. We want to reduce the costs for existing trade, as well as to create new opportunities for trade to grow. We want it to be easier for companies of all sizes to engage in trade in the UK, including through digital trade means. We want to establish a leveller playing field for New Zealand businesses who trade and operate in the UK. We want to strengthen opportunities for collaboration across a range of areas. In terms of the Trade for All agenda that the Prime Minister has already referred to, we envisage that achieving the objectives of Trade for All through this negotiation will be easier than it might be in negotiations with some other countries, because we both already have a shared interest in promoting sustainable development outcomes, including in respect of environment, climate change and labour. As we move into negotiations, we will be publishing the independent assessment of the views of New Zealanders that have already been expressed through the initial consultations on the UK-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. This is one of the recommendations of Trade for All and really arose out of some of the disquiet that there was about TPP negotiations by the prior government. As we continue in those negotiations, negotiators will undertake regular consultation and engagement with various sectors, including business and sector groups involved in trade, civil society stakeholders, including, of course, Maori leaders and other interested members of the public. Thank you, and we look forward to these negotiations with the United Kingdom.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Prime Minister, Minister Parker. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm really delighted that we're launching these UK-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement negotiations. As you've both said, the UK-New Zealand relationship is such an important one, built on a strong historical, family, sporting and cultural links, but also with a shared view of and shared ambition for the future. And I see the UK-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement as a key part of that. And as one of the UK's first bilateral free trade agreements, following our exit from the European Union, it will really help to set the tone for the UK's independent trade policy. We share a commitment to a high ambition, high quality, future-proof free trade agreement that will bring benefits to citizens of both our countries and support us in the recovery from COVID-19. This bilateral trade agreement will enhance the existing $6 billion trading relationship between our two countries. We want to see it reduce tariffs and facilitate customs arrangements on goods, whether that's New Zealand's agricultural produce, Scotch whisky, or UK-built cars. It will be cutting edge, we hope, in terms of services trade. We are, for example, particularly keen to see what we can do in the area of digital trade, learning from New Zealand's work on the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, just signed last week, and setting new global standards for trade in digital services, data, and artificial intelligence. It will also bring economic benefits to all, supporting efforts in both our countries to tackle inequality and progress other global goods. We want a free trade agreement that brings real, tangible benefits to Māori businesses, to SMEs, entrepreneurs, women-led businesses, and one that benefits all our regions. And as two countries deeply committed to tackling climate change, with the UK having legislated for net zero by 2050 last year and the UK hosting COP26 next year, we will work to ensure that the free trade agreement has strong environmental and sustainability provisions, that it encourages trade in environmental goods and services and supports the low carbon economic recovery from COVID. And I think we've very much shared that ambition. The UK, like New Zealand, sees free trade as a global good, not just in the way that it reduces poverty and increases prosperity around the world, but in the understanding and connections that it forges, making the world a better and safer place. So a UK-New Zealand free trade agreement will send a strong signal in times of global disruption, of two friends standing together against protectionism, working together to grow our economies, and setting the standard for innovative, inclusive, and sustainable trade. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you, High Commissioner. I'll now bring David and over on our side of the podium so that you've got a podium of your own, and we are now happy to take questions.
Prime Minister or Minister, what's the number one outcome that you hope to secure?
A secure future trading relationship with the United Kingdom with lower tariffs.
And just further to that, I mean, if you look at some of the tariffs facing some of our exporters, you know, over 8% for kiwi fruit, I think it's roughly 16% for manuka honey, even onions face a tariff going into the UK. So there's a range of different products that we pride ourselves on producing that would really benefit from an agreement that sees the reduction in those tariffs.
We've obviously had problems with the European Union regarding their agriculture access offer. Given that the UK's consultation document, businesses highlighted protecting their dairy and meat industries as a key issue for the UK, do you anticipate running into any similar problems in terms of these negotiations?
Yes, we always run into issues on agricultural access. Having said that, I think the United Kingdom is expressing the view that they've wanted to be more open with the rest of the world after Brexit than before. So we're hopeful in respect of those negotiations. It is also, though, as you are no doubt aware, somewhat complicated by the fact that the UK-EU Brexit negotiations are not yet complete. And on some areas of the negotiation, I think finalisation will be contingent on those outcomes.
What are the chances of abolishing the tariff rate quotas on dairy and meat and returning to the pre-1972 situation where New Zealand had duty-free and unlimited access to the UK market? In other words, going back to before Brexit, to before they joined the EU.
Well, I mean, obviously, the TRQ issue is being looked at through the Article 28 process in Geneva, and of course, that's the track that we're using to try and resolve that in the here and now. And we share an ambition to liberalise tariffs as much as possible, both on agricultural goods, but also, of course, the UK would like to see tariffs on gin, currently 5%, reduced. We would like to see the tariffs on car parts, currently 10%, reduced. And so it will be a whole peace negotiation. We will all come in with, there will be some areas that will be tough parts to negotiate and others where I think we will start with pretty much a shared ambition, and it's just a matter of seeing that through.
Sounds like we've almost started here and now.
I would say that if that was a negotiating, without disclosing confidential negotiating positions of the New Zealand government, we would accept such an offer.
High Commissioner, talks with Australia are beginning at the same time. Why is this? Are the two countries being treated the same, and will talks be conducted and concluded at the same time?
Well, both the UK and Australia and New Zealand are very, very close friends and partners of the UK, close partners, and also who are also innovative in terms of their trade policy. And so it was always considered that actually you could do both at the same time. There won't. Obviously, each negotiation will take its own pace, will have its own issues, but we see a real complementarity also with the Australia-New Zealand CER, and so there's real benefits to British business in doing both of those negotiations and then benefiting from the economic arrangement between Australia and New Zealand.
Just a similar question to the Prime Minister. Is there a chance that Australia and New Zealand could work as a bloc to negotiate these deals?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't read too much into the fact that we have timeliness, the fact that we're both launching at the same time. In part, I'd say that's an acknowledgement of the eagerness of both countries to enter into negotiations. But that's actually not unusual. It doesn't necessarily change our strategy for negotiations themselves.
Could I also say that one of the reasons why this negotiation, I think, on some of the less controversial areas will be relatively swift, is that some of these clauses have been recently agreed as between New Zealand and Australia through CPTPP. The United Kingdom expresses interest in joining CPTPP. So we would expect that some of those texts could be relatively readily agreed as between well, there's a lot of things. Digital trade, a lot of the rules relating to services. I think there's a lot in the CPTPP agreement that has found its way into subsequent agreements around the world, including the new form of NAFTA, USMCA. Now, New Zealand and Australia were fundamental in the advances that were made through that agreement, and I think that the United Kingdom understands that, and so we're not starting with a blank sheet of paper, we're starting with very good precedents to work from.
And to that, the
Parker,
fact that
what
Japan is amongst the first starters off the block, also obviously with that CPTPP bent.
Mr. Parker, what are New Zealand's bottom lines with respect to dairy and meat access?
You are wanting to start the negotiation.
Undisclosed at this press conference.
And I'd just add, if I can, to the point about Australia and New Zealand and CPTPP, is that part of the point of Brexit, of the UK leaving the European Union, is to strengthen its relationships with the rest of the world, to reach out and build its relationships in Asia Pacific far more. So we're applying for ASEAN Dialogue Partner status, for example, and we are absolutely, once we've done the UK and once we've done the New Zealand and Australia free trade agreements, we are absolutely interested in CPTPP and contributing the UK's economy and trading heft to that and making it even more global.
Sam.
Sorry, Minister Parker, I think you suggested in January this year that it may be possible to conclude negotiations by the end of this year. Do you still believe that's feasible?
I think that will depend in part on the Brexit negotiations.
New Zealanders, I think, still feel a sense of hurt, even almost 50 years later, when Britain joined the EU and New Zealand was left high and dry in terms of exports. What would you say to those New Zealanders?
Is that me?
It's probably better directed over here.
Shall I start?
Yes, have a go.
Nick? Well, I mean, what I generally say is actually, you know, and I hear that a lot of people talk about 1973. Actually, when you look at the graphs, New Zealand had started to diversify its trade partners and trade routes before that, and of course, 1973 and the UK joining the EEC accelerated that. But actually, when you look at it now from a current globalised point of view, would it still be sensible to have your main trading partner on the opposite side of the world? I think everyone agrees that diversification in trade is really, really important, and having trading partners that are in the region as well. So, but my feeling is, my hope is that we can build on those, you know, build on what's gone in the past, but actually build something greater going forward.
And look, no one can rewrite our history and the sentiment that was felt. It's not for us to change how people felt about that at the time. But, you know, I think the High Commissioner is correct. Our policy in the here and now is to strengthen New Zealand's resilience and our economy through diversification. And regardless of what lessons we learnt along the way that led us to that point, that is the right strategy.
When's a realistic time frame to have it concluded by?
Well, it's, I think we should knock off the easy stuff really quickly. You know, often these negotiations take longer than they need to. Strangely enough, one of the outcomes of COVID has been that Zoom-based meetings have enabled some of the more technical but less controversial parts of negotiations to proceed faster than they do through sequential face-to-face rounds. So I would hope that we can get through those parts of the negotiation quickly. Some of the more contentious parts, as I say, are slightly contingent on the Brexit EU negotiation, and will also, according to the advice that I've had from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, likely require face-to-face meetings to close. And part of that really relates to how fast the world can get over to COVID.
What's your best guess on a date?
I wouldn't put one. I wouldn't put a date out there yet.
Why are
That's a
they
couple of questions,
contingent
yeah.
on Brexit?
Because the policy space that the United Kingdom has depends in part on the terms of their Brexit agreement.
Is that specifically relating to meat exports?
No, I don't think it is. I think it
De-tariffation.
really relates to the agreement terms that they have more broadly with the European Union.
Yeah.
Will the agreement address access to the two countries' labour markets? I know New Zealand is a bit disappointed with the health surcharge at the moment in the UK.
Can I give you a more specific answer to that after I check with officials, because I'm not sure is the answer.
High Commissioner, there is a petition during the ranks at the moment that is asking the United Kingdom to declare war on New Zealand and immediately surrender so that New Zealand's leaders can take charge of Britain. And Australia, of course, would be neutral. Can you confirm whether this is being considered?
I couldn't possibly comment on the private conversations that take place between ministries.
Can I just ask a quick question on the Auditor General's report on PPE?
Nope, this is just dedicated to this, and you had me mere moments earlier in order to ask any wide-ranging questions you may have had. Can I take any more FTA questions? Yeah, down the back.
Just for the lay person who doesn't really know about these trade negotiations or how they work, why is this so significant?
Well, if I could answer that, I think anyone in business realises that diversity of trade relationships mean that if one part of the world suffers a decrease in their economy, you've got alternative markets to sell into. And so the more strong trading relationships that we have, or diverse trading relationships that we have, underpinned with really stable trade rules, the better for New Zealand exporters.
Did you want to answer that as well?
Yeah, and I would add that I think it's always really important for us to have a diversity of trading partners, particularly as geopolitics gets more and more interesting and you have the global disruption of COVID. It really underlines quite how important that trade is. And the other thing I would say is I think our shared hope that we can show how you can use trade policy to advance other global goods. How can you use trade policy? And New Zealand's really strong in this, innovating in trade policy to progress other objectives. How can we lead the way in using trade policy to address the great crisis of our time, which is climate change?
Yeah, I mean, actually, just from a New Zealand exporter's perspective, we produce amazing goods and services. We want other people from around the world to access them without extra costs and barriers in place. You know, why should there be extra costs to someone accessing New Zealand kiwi fruit in the UK? So that's a very small example of something that actually limits then the amount of trade that we might be doing because of those barriers. So let's remove them. That's my pitch.
From your point of view, what are some of the stickier points that the UK will be looking to get access to from New Zealand?
Again, I probably don't want to preempt the negotiations. We are hoping to reduce tariffs, reduce non-tariff measures, ease customs, and look to see what we can do in services trade that is really innovative and cutting edge.
Non-tariff barriers, tariffs are sort of coming down. Well, there's been the recovery a bit in some of them as we've got a bit more protectionism. But in terms of non-trade barriers, that seems to have been increasingly difficult for global businesses around the world. What are some of the things that an open economy like New Zealand becomes a sticking point for the UK?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I think we're interested in is looking at what more we can do on temporary movement of people for services trade, for example. And lots of these things will be of shared interest to both of us. They just reduce the friction, make it easier for people to sell their goods, sell their services, have those connections, which are also very creative as well. It's not just about selling stuff, it's about how do we, to advance outward-looking economies, innovate, share ideas, and try and tackle the challenges that we both face.
Okay, we'll take the last couple of questions. Richard?
Britain has shown that it's prepared to relax environmental standards when it's come to its free trade negotiations with the United States. How are we going to hold Britain to the kind of environmental standards that we would pursue?
I don't think that's true, Richard. We haven't said that we're going to relax our environmental standards. We've been absolutely clear that we're going to keep the highest possible environmental standards in terms of animal welfare and all other standards, of course, labour and social standards. So, you know, leaving the EU is absolutely not a race to the bottom in any way, and we're very clear that we're going to maintain high standards, and that would be an opening position for the UK, but it's not going to be an issue in a UK-New Zealand free trade agreement because we both have high standards.
In fact, some of
area.
my early conversations with Prime Minister Johnson, in fact, we have talked about how we can model a high-quality agreement, given that both of us, of course, are, as the rest of the world is, facing the challenges of climate change, and we both have an interest in demonstrating that we're taking that seriously and embedding that in our agreements.
So no chlorinated chickens.
Chlorinated chicken.
We already shared that joke a couple of nights ago with Liz Truss and agreed no chlorinated chicken.
And on that note, we'll wrap up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.